Hi, you're here with Kasim Abdur Razak, self-published author of Black Child Run and Five Essential Principles for Healing Black Men and Raising Black Boys. Today, I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk specifically about the writing process. What does it take? What are some of my tips? What were things that were helpful for me? What are the barriers that I ran into? And what are the opportunities to be able to take a story, start it, and bring it from start to finish, and have that story shared with other people? So the first thing that I'll start with is my personal story, how I started with uh, wanting to even write a book. As a young kid growing up, I was a person who listened. I was a listener. I'm a middle child, and I enjoyed listening to people because to listen to someone offered me the opportunity to interact with them in a way uh, that developed great relationship. And so I was always a listener, and so I had all of these stories because I listened to people. I would listen to things they would say to me. I would listen to their problems. I would listen to their joys and their excitements. So I always had these stories that were inside of me. But I like to take those stories and put a twist on them and kind of make them my own. And I found out that this was a great way to connect to people, build relationship, and to be creative with telling the experiences that I've had. My first book that I wrote was Five Essential Principles for Healing Black Men and Raising Black Boys. And it was a book that was very timely, but it was a book that also, there was no way for me not to write it. It was something that every single day that I woke up, there was something in my gut that said, you have to tell your story, a story. And it was a story that was very specific to my own experiences, but it was also a story that felt very shared by other African American men and boys during my time of work in my community. And so the first thing that really kind of pushed me to say this needs to be in a writing is that I wanted to share my story with my community in a way where people were able to pick it up, walk through it, read it, and say, yes, this is my experience. I understand this experience. And so for me, the writing process actually started from an emotional place. And this is important because one of the tips I'll share with you about writing is that motivation comes from a very affective or emotional space. And so to start this writing process, sometimes it comes with an ideal, but that ideal can start and you can run out of energy unless you have the emotion and the passion to kind of see it through to the end. So, one of the tips of writing is to really find a story that you feel motivated enough to start and finish. To start and finish. And the way you know that is because it's something that when you wake up, you think about it, you feel it, you experience it, and you could tell that story, pieces of that story, every single day if somebody asked you about it. And that was me. I was telling this story about what it was like for me to be an African American boy growing up in the city with my parents, experiencing the death of my father, walking through that traumatic experience, and how I was dealing with that. And so I found this common theme of loss, grief. Most people have experienced grief and loss. And so this offered me the opportunity to tell my story around grief and loss, how it impacted me, how I worked through that, and how I was hoping to help other people work through their grief and loss. So motivation is key. Find something that is in your gut, creating a fire that cannot be put out. That fire is the building block to writing a great story. If that fire is burning, you know that the story is something that needs to be told. So, one tip for the writing process is really finding your motivation. You may have tens of stories, you may have 20s of stories, you may have hundreds of stories, but find that one story that burns deep inside of you that you don't mind telling it over and over, that you feel is super important to you, that motivates you to get up in the morning, get up in the afternoon, and write. Finding that motivation is key to the writing process. The second thing that I want to share that's really important is creating a routine. Having a routine for writing is extremely important. Um, Part of it is because having a routine means that you are preparing yourself for an exact time, an exact way that puts you into the psychological and emotional state to create your book. For me, one of the ways that I did that was I'm a person who the beginning of the morning is a great time for my mind. My mind is wide open. I'm relaxed. I'm ready to uh, be in a very strong mental state. However, I'm not necessarily in a state to be able to tell the story. And so, one of the things that I had to do, this was part of my routine. My mind was ready in the morning, but my body wasn't. And I had to make those two things sync. The thing that my body hates the most is in the morning to exercise. And I don't mean like lifting weights or push ups, I mean like strong cardio work, so running on the treadmill. A big part of my writing routine is that every morning I would go to the gym and I would exercise 45 minutes uh, of cardio. And I would literally like exhaust myself. So I would go into the gym and for 45 minutes, I would exert myself hard on the treadmill or do some type of cardio that really exhausted me. That was taking care of my body. That was part of the routine to take care of my body, but it was also a routine to prep my mind. The story that I wanted to tell was a story that was connected to experiences that I had. And in order to be able to tell those stories, my body and my body needed to be at rest, but my mind needed to be prepared to tell the story. And so I would take these 45 minutes, work out, and then I would shower, and then I would start. I would come into my office, and I would start to write. And what I found is that the mornings was the best time for me right after exercise. Why? Because I had taken in so much information, my body and my mind was ready to download. It was ready to tell the story. I didn't know how much I would write during the morning, each morning. I just knew I would be ready to write. So every morning, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, I would get up and I would go through this routine. And what I ended up finding was that there'd be mornings that I'd get up, I'd go through this routine, and I'd maybe get 20 minutes worth of writing in, sometimes 10 minutes worth of writing in. Sometimes I could go for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just writing the story. But the reason this routine was so important is because the routine kept me on track. It allowed me to continue to make progress, but it also let my mind and my body knew that I was going to do this at this time under these conditions every single day. And so having a routine that you do, that you commit to, having a routine, I'm going to write at this time, and then thinking about who you are as a person. My routine was about exhausting my body so that my mind was prepared to speak. For you, your body might be already ready to go. So what is that routine? What is that thing that you need to put you in an optimal position to be able to tell your story? Routine, motivation, two vital parts of the writing process. Motivation and routine will not get you there. Creating deadlines. Deadlines, oh my goodness. Deadlines are vitally important. Why? Because to have a book, you have to complete it. Setting deadlines. It doesn't have to be anything where you set deadlines as I'm going to finish by December 23rd of 2020. Deadlines can be something that are flexible, which means you can move them, but it means that you're giving yourself some parameters around what you want to see. And so for me, the deadlines were every week. Every week I checked in with myself and I said, I need to have created content. Those deadlines were not about how much content, but it was to say I needed to create content. And so I had weekly deadlines. Saturday morning, I would go back through. That was my deadline to look and revise or read through what I had written. Those soft deadlines gave birth to hard deadlines. And I remember the very first hard deadline. As I was writing the book, 5 Essential Principles for Healing Black Men and Raising Black Boys, part of my process was I began to talk to people about what I was writing. And it wasn't because I was telling people that I was writing a book. It was because I wanted to process and talk about the experiences and things that I was writing. And I remember sitting in a conversation with someone who was holding an event. And he said, Kasim, I really enjoy what you're talking about. Would you be ready? Would you be ready? Would your book be ready to talk about this at a forum that I'm having in 7 months? And I said, whoa, yeah, it'll be done. It'll be ready. I finished the book in 4 months. Why? Because I gave myself some hard deadlines. I said, if this event is happening in 7 months, in 4 months, I need to have this writing complete. Complete in a way where I've had the opportunity to do something that is another part of the writing process, which is editing. I went through 2 editing processes. There's the first editing process was me reading through my own work. Part of what I was reading for was, how does this sound to me? Is it conveying the thoughts and the stories in the way that I want to tell it? That was my first editing. It wasn't for punctuation. It wasn't for grammar. It was for, is this story being conveyed? Is it coming across in a way that I want it to be told? As a writer, that is extremely important because the way you tell your story speaks to who your audience is. My books were specific to audiences of everyday people. I wasn't writing a journal article for, one of the universities. I was writing a story to connect with everyday people, children, adults, elders. And so I wanted to make sure that I told my stories in a way that really captured the way that I wanted to tell that story. So telling that story and the way that you wanted to tell it, that was the first part of my edits. The second part of my edits was going through and looking for grammatical errors, looking for punctuation. That was a part of my editing process, not because I needed to have that be a part of my editing process, but because it was something that I take pride in and it was a value to me. I know I had the ability to make those types of edits. As a writer, you do not have to feel intimidated if editing is not your strong suit. Why? Because they have people that's what they get paid to do, is to edit your writing, to make sure grammar, make sure punctuation, make sure margins are correct. And that was the third phase of my editing. After I went through and I felt confident and felt good about how I told the story, the second thing I went through was I did my own edits around grammar and punctuation. But my last phase was to send it off to an editor and ask them to look through it for grammatical errors, look through it for misspelling, look through it for punctuation. And the beautiful part of living in a technological age is that we don't have to go through brick and mortar publishers or editors to have this process happen. I was able to go online and find someone who wasn't even in the same state as me and say, I would like to have you edit a writing that I have. And it was a person who their credentials were phenomenal. They had been editing for over a decade. I was able to look on their website, find it. I sent them my manuscript. Not only did they go through and look for punctuation and grammar, they also set the margin. So they set the book format up for me. I told them what size the book that I wanted, which as a writer, this is important. If you're writing a children's book and you want images on there, you're not going to have a book that's really small. You might want a book that, again, is easy to hold, but also has the ability to capture pictures in a way that um, is good for young people. And so when I sent it off, that's what I had the editor do. They created the margins. They put my text in the fonts that it should be in to make sure that it was easy for the eye to read. And they checked for my grammar. The last step, publishing. So got through editing. Now it's time to take this thing to publish. There's opportunities today that were not here 40, 50 years ago, maybe even 20, 30 years ago. And it's the ability to self-publish with high quality and far-reaching publishing. I chose the self-publishing route for a couple reasons. One, I wanted to get the books into the hands of people everywhere and still have ownership over my own book and my own story. Self-publishing offered me the ability to, again, have ownership over the book rights, but over what price point. So I set the price point of how much this book was valued at and how much I would sell it for. That was important. Why? I wanted a book that could reach the hands of people and it not be something that people had to pay a lot of money for. So I set the price point. Self-publishing offered me that ability. The other reason why I chose to self-publish is because having an editor review for grammar is different than having a publisher review for content. I did not want my story changed. This was not a fictional story. This was real life experiences that I went through, and I did not want that edited in terms of its content. And so self-publishing became a very viable option for me because I wanted to tell the story the way I wanted to tell it without any edits, without the content being changed or scrutinized. I wanted to have that authority to tell it exactly how it was. The other side of that is I didn't care as much about making tons of money off the book. That wasn't the purpose. That wasn't the intention. The intention was to share the story in the way that I wanted to share it with people who would be able to understand and receive that story. Self-publishing offers all of those benefits. However, going through a publisher also has benefits. Sometimes if you're an established writer already, or if you're not an established writer already, having a publisher, someone who backs your story and gets it out to the masses of people, can be a great opportunity. Why? Because sometimes publishers have far reach and they can take your book, and not only the book, but they can take you all over the world. And sometimes publishers have the ability to say, we have this constituency of people and we're going to put your book in their hands, which allows the author to be in these spaces. Maybe they're in China, maybe they're in Africa, maybe they're in Chicago and you're in Minnesota, maybe they're in California or New York. But it allows you to travel and build not only a fan base, but to build a web of networks of people who are familiar with your writing. And so sometimes finding a publisher can be a great first start because it allows you to build that network. And then you can choose to self-publish after that because now you have that audience, you have that reach, and your second book can be something that you self-publish and you're able to access all of those benefits that you had from using a publisher. Either way you go, there's no wrong way, whether you choose to self-publish or go through a publisher to get your writing out there. Both of them is going to be completely up to you and what you think is in the best benefit of you. So one other thing that I want to share with you is about illustration. when I wrote the children's book, Black Child Run, there needed to be pictures to capture the story. Um, Illustration is a very important part of a book. It's also an opportunity if you are not an artist, which I am not an artist. I am not a person who is able to draw the pictures. It's an opportunity to collaborate. For me, I took the very specific route of going through a media site that was full of different artists, visual artists. And some of them were good in the areas of graphic design. Some of them were good in freehand drawing. Some of them with digital design. And I just searched through. They all had pictures up of their work, and I just searched through for the type of style of drawing that I felt really captured um, what I wanted to convey in my story. And when I found one, I saw these images, and I was like, man, these are really cool. These are really like nice images. And I reached out to the artist, and it wasn't about taking images that they already had. I had the opportunity to collaborate with them, to let them hear my story. So I sent the story over, Black Child Run. I said, this is what I want to convey. And the artist, she was able to send back to me her thoughts. And she said, this is what I see with each page of the story. And then I was able to influence the way that she did the art, the way that she drew the pictures. And so I said, man, I really want this character to look like this. And all of this is happening, not in person, but through social media. And I'm sending through my my wants in terms of what I would like to see in the art, and she's sending me back. And the beautiful opportunity was that in this collaboration, I had the opportunity to revise. So once we landed on what we agreed upon as what the images would look like from page to page, she would send me the final version, and then I could accept that, or I could say I want a revision. And sometimes the revisions were small. They were like, oh, I don't like the positioning of the character's hand, or I want this placed in the background of the character. And sometimes it was more specific and bigger changes, such as, I want the character's, hair to look like this, or I want the character's skin tone to look like this. And those revisions were all part of a collaborative process of creating the illustration. And it was actually one of the things that I found super enjoyable, because writing the story is one thing, and I had a picture of what it looked like in my head. And my hope was to take that picture and to get it on to paper as an image. And so this collaborative process was really about the creative work together between me and the illustrator to bring the life to story. So if you are choosing to write a story that you would like expressed in images, finding an illustrator is going to be your friend. Finding someone to collaborate with you and tell the story. And through that collaboration, there's a second benefit for the person who shares in this experience with you, is that you get to give them credit. So in the book Black Child Run, it has who the author is, me, Kasim, and then it has illustrated by. And so this person, not only did they take their time and their talent to invest in this process with me, but they get the credit for their illustrations. I own the pictures, but I'm acknowledging that they are a person who collaborated with me on this story. One step in your writing process is going to be considering cost. Great thing about living in a digital age is that there are lots of ways to get your project complete at different price points. Take the time to do some research on self-publishing and think about what your budget is. Think about how much money you actually have to give to this project. And I'm super confident that whatever that number is, whether it's a large amount of money or a small amount of money, you're able to find people that you can collaborate with that will help you get your project done, from editing to illustration to publishing to print, all at a budget that fits what's in your wallet or what's in your purse. And so I want to take this time to thank Dakota County Library and MELSA for allowing me this opportunity.